Wow, crazy. So, there's a Buddhist nun, Pema Chodron. She's an American lady, and she often speaks to large groups like this. And she has a talk she calls Unconditional Confidence. And she begins that talk by comparing the beginning of a talk to the situation of an artist standing in front of an empty canvas, or a writer sitting in front of an empty piece of paper. The situation, she says, is wide open. It's just unknown. Even the artist, the writer, or the speaker doesn't really know what's going to happen next. And then a word happens, and then another word happens. And somehow the piece or the talk just unfolds from there. And it's an interesting situation we're in, you and I. When we come to see a talk, in no other situation do we have the focused attention of so many people gathered into one place as it is now between you listening and me speaking. Even if we go to see a theatrical performance or a musical performance, there's the added elements of the instruments or the story or the set, things which take our attention and make it more diffuse. And actors, the way I see it, when they're standing on a stage, they're not interacting directly with people, seeing and being seen just for who they are in the way that's happening now. And it does not surprise me that the majority of people feel nervous about being in this spot here, because it's unusual. When do we stand and receive the focused attention of so many people? We may well ask ourselves whether we can relax and enjoy doing this thing and get our message across in the way that we would most enjoy, with the most elegance and wit that we would like. But there is this sense of possibility. There is this possibility that if we stay open and in connection in this wide open space, that it might be possible for us to have a truly meaningful conversation. It's not actually my first time standing on a Heidelberg stage. I know I have a British accent, but I studied in Heidelberg. And I was much cooler when I was younger, and I was in a band. I played bass guitar. I wasn't actually very good, to be honest. I couldn't read music, and I kind of just made it up as I went along. But it was good enough, and we played gigs in this area. One gig we played was at the Karlstor Bahnhof, for those of you who know that. And I can remember standing on the stage with my bass in my hand and just freezing as I looked at the audience and realized they were paying attention to what we were doing up on the stage. It was just overwhelming. So I intelligently came up with a really good strategy. I played with the entire gig like this. My favorite gig was in Mannheim, where there wasn't enough space for the band to play in the main hall, so they put us in a room on our own. Heaven. I sat and played, invisible to everyone. I sat and played and enjoyed the music. The thing that was a bit strange about that was, at the time, I considered myself to be a really confident person. I didn't have shyness as part of my self-identity at all. I thought I was outgoing, extrovert, dynamic, I can do this. So what I did with the experience of shyness was, I just denied it to myself. I just didn't look, I didn't take it in. I just pretended that I wasn't shy. But when I look back at that time, and in fact when I look back over my whole life, I can see periods of anxiety that have kind of just happened to me for various reasons, public speaking among them. And it was at that moment when I started to admit to myself that I was actually feeling nervousness in perhaps a situation like this, that I was able to start looking for answers on how to build actual confidence. And I found some answers. And when I found them, I just experienced a kind of a natural motivation to want to share those answers with people that might also sometimes feel that the ground was missing underneath their feet. And that's the story of how I became a trainer and a coach in confident and present public speaking. And I'd like to share a little bit more with you about the things I've learnt in that. And to point out that confidence is not something that we can think our way into. We don't tell ourselves, be confident, and it works. But what we can do is to develop more sensitivity to the body, to what we're feeling. And when we have more understanding of what's taking place in the body, the ground begins to firm up underneath our feet and we can feel more solid. And that's true even if we are feeling nervous. So one of the main kind of insights that I've had around this is an understanding of the way the nervous system works, in particular the autonomic nervous system. So for those of you who know, that's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic branches of the nervous system. And commonly these are known as fight and flight on the one hand, and what I'll call rest and digest on the other. So you know the way it is. If we're feeling that there's a threat in the environment, something which is scary, or possibly even just by imagining a potential threat, we get triggered into this fight or flight response. And then we get full of energy, we tense up, we do all kinds of things that will enable us to fight a potential threat or possibly run away from it. When we're in the rest and digest state, then we feel safe and we can do things like eat, sleep, heal wounds, process information. And relevant for our topic today, when the rest and digest state is dominant in the system, we can socially engage. And so there's a term which a researcher called Stephen Porges has coined, which is the social engagement system. And that is simply the way that our body organizes around being in connection with people when we feel safe. So I'd like to share a couple of pictures with you to demonstrate these things. This is me when I was little. And you may be able to tell from my body language here that I'm not entirely happy. So my shoulders are coming up, my neck and my back muscles are tensing, which is pushing my head forwards very slightly, and my fingers are curling like this. I'm old enough to think I should be smiling at the camera, so I'm really doing my best. But it's tough, and so we kind of got this mixture of like, woohoo. So this would be a demonstration of how fight and flight is actually operating physically in the body. This, on the other hand, was a photograph taken by my beloved Uncle Clive. And I loved him. I loved hanging out with him. I loved our connection. And so I felt very safe with him. And you can see my body's soft, my face is relaxed, and I'm socially engaged. I have the main parasympathetic rest and digest activity in the body, and therefore I'm able to enter into this social engagement with my uncle, seeing him, being seen by him, and really enjoying it. This is an example of a public speaker, a professional speaker in this case, who seems to me to feel incredibly comfortable on stage. She's using the full range of her body language. She's relaxed in her face, she's smiling, she's expressing herself, and most importantly, I think she's expressing social engagement to such a high degree because she's clearly enjoying being seen. She's kind of soaking up the attention of the audience. So the question becomes, it can be quite easy to get triggered into fight and flight, We're human. We respond to things all the time, consciously or unconsciously. That's okay. It's normal. We can manage that. But what matters is being able to support ourselves to move into social engagement so that when we're in situations like this, we can relax and connect. So one of the main pathways that I've found for supporting myself to enter into social engagement is something that I learned with a training organization called Speaking Circles. In Speaking Circles, they train what's called relational presence. And that simply means the ability to stay present and in relationship with the people we speak to. That matters because often when we see an audience, our instinctive response is to somehow find it too distracting, as me with the bass guitar, and to disconnect. And so speakers will often find anywhere to look except the audience. They'll address the air, the heavens. They may just address the front row, or possibly they kind of just stare into the middle distance and just kind of address the audience as a group, as a whole. But what relational presence does, which is different, is it encourages a connection between individuals. So that in this moment, I'm seeing somebody and I'm allowing them to see me, and then I'm moving on to the next person. What happens when we allow ourselves to connect with individuals, rather than seeing a mass or avoiding, is that we support the message internally that we're safe, because we can manage one-to-one. So we get that message, I'm safe, and that supports us then to move more into social engagement. Now that's all very well, but sometimes when we look at the people we're speaking to, they look like this. Now, these are classified neutral expressions. We don't know what's really going on in these people's minds and hearts. But if we were nervous, especially then, it would be very easy for us to read in or project criticism and judgment onto those faces. That's when it's easy. Sometimes we look into an audience and the expression we see is this. It's a cat. We have no idea what that cat is thinking and feeling. It might be feeling like this. But the thing that matters is that we need to recognize we have this mechanism to project. Just because the cat has a certain expression, a certain tilt of the head, a certain lowering of the eyelids, that's something we interpret as judgment or possibly anger. And if that's what we see in the audience, what will happen each time is that we'll get a slight injection of fight and flight that will make us feel slightly nervous. And it would only take one or two people in the audience to look like this for us to feel, oh, it's not okay. I'm not doing a good job. They don't like it. I'm going to come back to that. I wonder if you've been able to guess what these are. Was that a yes? What is it? You know the picture, amazing. So often people think of ice cream, bacteria. In fact, they are the inside of golf balls. This is a piece by an artist called James Friedman. It's called Interior Design. Who would have known how multicolored and vibrant and various these interiors could be? When we look at the exterior, we receive such little information about what's really going on the inside. So the advice is, when you are addressing your audiences, whether that's in a big event or whether you're just contributing in a meeting, or you may even simply be with friends at dinner, don't assume you know how people are receiving you just because they have on a particular expression. It's much too easy to get it wrong. Instead, what's wise is to bring a little bit more trust that everything's okay. Bringing in a bit more trust can help the nervous system just feel like, we're good, we're good. So, a couple of days ago, I tried to go swimming. I went to the Darmstädter swimming pool here in Heidelberg. And it was a bit strange because the ticket machine said closed, but the gate was open, so I kind of walked in. And then other people were walking in. But what I saw, every time somebody passed me by, they smiled at me really warmly. And I thought, how friendly, that's lovely. Why are they doing that? And then I suddenly worked out as I'd walked towards the pool that actually it was a private club night, not open to the public, so I turned around, left the building, and everyone I passed just smiled at me really warmly. And then it dawned on me, they thought I was part of the club. They'd never seen me before, but they just assumed I was one of them. And don't we have this natural capacity to bring more trust and openness into situations with other people, as long as we feel some kind of kinship? But what would it be like if we brought that trust and openness into more of our communication, when the situation is perhaps more challenging? For example, if you would be standing on this stage now as I am with you. Because I suspect that you didn't just come here tonight to hear new ideas and be entertained, although that may also be true. But there's also something very enjoyable about coming together, about building a community, and about having a sense of shared purpose. And I suspect that that sense of shared purpose may be essential when we have a sense of shared difficulty. We need to bring more trust and openness into our communication, because there is no doubt that the challenges we're facing, whether they're individual or collective, are significant. But if we can bring a bit more trust into our communication and we can allow ourselves to be seen for who we actually are rather than the person we think we should be, we may be able to find a bit more ground beneath our feet so that we can step forwards and make our contribution. Thank you.